Hey, thanks for checking out the Illini Inquirer YouTube channel. If you can do us a favor, continue your support. Give us a follow here on YouTube. Hit the notifications button, hit the subscribe button. That really helps us out. We're hoping to give you more content on our video channel here, whether it's player interviews, reactions, our daily dish series where we're going to be more topical and talk about the Illini. So give us some support. We appreciate all of it. Give us a follow, hit the notifications bell as well, and subscribe to us here on Illini Inquirer YouTube. Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. Before we get to the weekend, we want to talk some NBA draft and some Illini basketball news. And who else will we bring on for that? The Mike LaTulip, Illini Inquirer basketball analyst, former Illini and Wright State player, and now in Indianapolis. And I see the backdrop. You got the Illinois jersey, the Wright State jersey. Man, I don't have those in my background, Mike. So what's up, man?
Well, it's funny, these jerseys, I didn't go out and get them framed and put them up. I got them on both senior nights. I had to put them somewhere, and in my office here, this is really the only wall that it fit on. I know I didn't have a Hall of Fame career, but I got a framed jersey, so I got to put it up somewhere.
Stop being humble, man. Like if I played at Wright State in Illinois, I'd be hanging those jerseys too. So
fair enough.
Don't be humble about it. All right, Mike, before we get to it, we're going to have a winners and losers of draft night. You and I both love the NBA and both love the NBA draft. We're nerds that way, but I do want to hit on a few Illini things. In the Big Ten ACC Challenge, matchups came out today, this morning, and Illinois draws Syracuse. It's a battle of orange. It will be at State Farm Center, which I think is great for Illini fans to be able to have a premier opponent. I know Syracuse hasn't been as good here recently, but a premier opponent come to State Farm Center. I think that's one of the good things about not having the Chicago game here recently is you had Arizona come into town, and that was an electric atmosphere. I know Syracuse isn't as buzzworthy as they were maybe a couple of years ago, Mike, but what do you think of that matchup?
It's a fun one. It's a great test, and I don't think Syracuse is going to be great. They've lost a lot. The Boeheims are gone, and Cole Swider just got a two-way deal with the Lakers, and a couple other guys that they lost. And but look, they're always a tough test because they force you to play a certain way with that zone. Not to get into the X's and O's of a Syracuse Illinois game that's about 6-7 months away, but look, you have more playmakers this year, and against a team like Syracuse, having more playmakers that you can plant in the middle of that zone. I'm thinking about Ty Rodgers or even moving Matthew Meyer into the middle of that zone, and there's a lot that you can do. So I like the test. I like that the test is early because Syracuse forces you to get stagnant. They force you to take some out of rhythm shots. So it's a good test for this offense. It's a good test for this defense because as much as I say that Syracuse lost a lot, they're going to find a way to still be competitive. So I like the matchup early. The Big Ten ACC Challenge is always one of those interesting ones when it comes out because it gives you a sense of almost how they view both teams. They're putting Indiana versus North Carolina, and they typically try to stack those up. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I like the matchup.
Yeah, Mike, like the one thing I'm sitting here thinking is I think there's probably only 3 teams Illinois fans wouldn't have been disappointed by. Like you wanted Duke or North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I cannot blame them for Indiana and North Carolina. That's going to be an amazing atmosphere in Bloomington. Ohio State still has a huge brand, right? So they played Duke this year. Maybe I would have done something different there. Virginia, Michigan, 2 really good programs. That makes sense. I would have liked Florida State. I think that would have been really interesting with the length, athleticism that Leonard Hamilton has had. But the depth of the ACC is so bad right now. Like, Wisconsin's the Big Ten champion, reigning Big Ten champion, right, with Illinois. And they get Wake, who had a good year last year, but that's like a premier matchup this year. So I just think it's a conference that's down like Iowa against Georgia Tech this year. So I think for Syracuse, I agree with you, Mike. I think it's a great test of, hey, this is kind of a weird matchup you could get in the NCAA tournament. It's a great test of your team. but it's also a winnable game because
Right.
offensively they shouldn't be very good. Like they shouldn't be very good, but I'm going to call it the Dane Danger game because I think in the pinch post and, he could really do work. Ty Rodgers, Coleman Hawkins. I think it's going to be a great test of those guys and a great test of the young guys and how disciplined they are right away because I mean, that zone can just throw people off kilter. So I'm kind of excited about it. And I think it's two programs have a lot of history, some similar history as well.
Yeah, it's another good chance to see what type of offensive rebounding team that you have.
Yeah.
As potent as the Syracuse zone's been over the years, that's always the hardest thing to do out of it is block out. And now you have, as I mentioned, Ty Rodgers and Matthew Meyer and Coleman Hawkins and Dane. Like you have guys that are Terrence Shannon. You have guys that are flying in for offensive rebounds. It's a more athletic team. It's a longer team. So the more I'm talking about it, I already like the matchup, but now I like it even more because I think it's a winnable game, and two, I just think it's going to test them, like you mentioned. That's the type of Sweet 16. Not to say it's this year, but that type of team that you could see. When I say this year, I mean for Syracuse. That type of team you can run into, and you just have to grind it out. It may not be pretty, it may get ugly at times, but finding ways to win those games and win games in multiple ways. And they've shown that they can do that over the years, and you're going to do it for this type of game too.
I like the different matchups they're going to get, like the different stylistic matchups. Like you think of Baylor and what they could bring. I mean, there's just a load of talent, how Scott Drew plays. But then you think, could you play Virginia in Las Vegas and play that plotting, style that has done so well for them? Or UCLA that's a little bit more open, free. I think it's fascinating. Then Missouri, who's a bunch of, it's going to be a tough game. It always is. So I just like the way that's all kind of coming out to be. All right, the other big piece of news here, Kofi Cockburn, undrafted. Not a surprise there, Mike. I don't think to most of us, and I would think not for Kofi Cockburn, but he signs an Exhibit 10 contract with Utah Jazz, not guaranteed. Going to have to earn his spot in the summer league and potentially try and play his way, I would imagine, to a two-way contract is the goal here. What do you think of Kofi Cockburn to the Utah Jazz?
You saw his name pop up on Best Available at one point, late. I mean, obviously it looked like he wasn't going to get drafted. And like we talked about, that's not necessarily a surprise to anybody. I think we always knew the path was going to be potentially two-way. And for those that don't know about an Exhibit 10, it's something that, it's basically a training camp offer. You're able to play preseason. There's Max Strus. There's a lot of different guys. I know they're different players, but there's been Kendrick. There's been guys that have made names for themselves in summer league. Brandon Paul got signed with the Spurs after playing extremely well in summer league as well. So a lot of opportunity for him. Just like a lot of these guys, we talk about Brandon, we talk about Malcolm Hill. Sometimes it's this serpentine path to the league. It's not always wearing a jersey the second you get out of college. So can you stick with it? Can you keep working and working until you get that shot and then be ready for it when it comes? So I think he's in a good spot. It's a good organization. I know there's a little bit of turnover. I know they don't have a head coach currently. But I think with Danny Ainge kind of running the show a little bit over there, and they have some decent ownership. It's not a bad place to be.
It's a good point. Like I thought of, they've actually used traditional kind of centers recently, right? I mean, Rudy Gobert is different, right? Like we could talk about should the Bulls trade for him. He's an incredibly valuable center in the league and one of the best, obviously. But then they had Hassan Whiteside. If you're looking for a Kofi comp in the NBA, it was probably Udoka Azubuike, right? So like it kind of fits. So maybe that's what Kofi saw here. And yeah, what do you think he needs to show? Like how does he do it in summer league? We know his issues in the NBA, Mike. We know his flaws, but how do you think he gets that two-way deal?
Yeah, I think if you're Kofi, you can't sit there and just think that I got to go out and show that I can knock down 17-footers, corner three. Like you don't have to do that. That's let yourself develop a little bit. because the value that you had in college, the value and what made you a dominant player was what you were good at. And don't abandon that, because if you abandon that, you basically become an all new player, and now you have to build that up. So I think for him, it's ball screen, ball screens, ball screens. Like on the offensive end, can you set it? Can you roll hard? Can you command some attention so that maybe you're getting other guys open looks on the perimeter? But defensively, man, we talk about ball screens in this league. Well, look at the NBA Finals. They didn't run a ton of ball screens. The percentage was much lower in terms of ball screens they ran for Steph Curry during the regular season. But in the NBA Finals and the NBA playoffs, when all breaks down, that's what they go to. And if you are not potent guarding those screens, if you can't do both, and if you're a liability, they can't have you on the floor. It goes back to what I said in the last podcast that we had. What does that list look like? Reasons to keep you off the floor, reasons to keep you on the floor. Which one's longer? And if the one to keep you on the floor is longer, you give yourself a good chance. So, look, I think anyone that's coming into the league, you have to understand and be self-aware of just how young you are. You got a lot of time, right? You know, PJ Tucker spent 5 years overseas. Patrick Beverley played overseas. Like, it doesn't always happen overnight. So just because you don't get drafted, you take all these little opportunities you get. You don't try to project out, focus in the moment, figure out what you have to do, be coachable. Those are the guys that make it. It's not just, you know, if Kofi goes in, look, I'll give this is even a better example. Nana Egwu, okay? Nana Egwu didn't get drafted, obviously, goes to the Orlando Magic. And I'm pretty sure in Summer League, he might have averaged 4 and 4. But he was the very last guy cut during training camp because of all the little things that he did. And I know there was a front office and Scott Skiles, there was disagreement there. One wanted cap space, one wanted to keep him. And that's how you can still show your value in other ways.
And that was before two ways, right?
Yes.
Like, so I wonder, is his career different if they have the two ways? So that's the great part about being a college guy who doesn't get drafted right now, is these two-way contracts provide a lot of opportunity. So hopefully it works out for him. Like, everyone wants to, there's some people who want to relitigate. Should he have gone? Listen, it was risky to pass up the money, right? Like, if you're just talking strictly financially, it probably made a lot more sense to come back, but he wasn't improving his draft stock. No matter what, he wasn't improving his draft stock, and Kofi just wanted to go pro. So as long as the people around him were upfront about that, and Kofi understood that, like, hey, this is a little bit of financial risk short term, but I think he understood that, Mike, and kudos to the guy. Like, there's not much more he could do in college, and let's be honest, probably didn't want to be in college anymore. He wanted to go play professional basketball.
You tell me guys don't want to be in school? Come on.
I was done with school after 4 years, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I know for Illinois fans it would have been convenient, right? But I think at the same time, it's probably something Kofi's dreamed about for a long time, and it's hard to pass it up again. And you never know what can happen with injuries and you know, crazier stuff has happened. So, you know, if you feel like you're at the peak of your stock anyways, I mean, why not go?
All right, Mike, let's get into the fun of this. Let's go with the winners and losers of the NBA draft. This is all subjective. It can all come back and look bad if we recut this up in a couple of years. But can I start with the winners and losers of draft night?
Please.
I want to go with the local angle, but I want to start with a loser of the draft. And I think you and I agree with this one. ESPN and ABC, man. These broadcasts of the draft have gotten bad.
It's bad.
I'm a basketball fan, and I get the ABC. I like how they're trying to do hey, if you're interested in stories, go over here. It's the widespread audience. Like, what does your mom and dad, like, what does your mom want to watch if she's not a hooper? Or, you know, if somebody in your life isn't into it, that's not a bad option. But on ESPN, why is Kendrick Perkins on the desk? He doesn't study these guys. Like,
no.
Comparing, who's the guy he compared to Ben Simmons? Paolo. Like, what are we doing? They are completely different. Ben Simmons is an all-world defender. Paolo is
Jabari Smith and Kevin Durant, Trevor Keels and Desmond Bane.
What are we doing?
And the other thing too is, like, you know, getting things mixed up, and they were talking about the 13th pick, and I do believe he meant Jalen Duren, but he said, "Oh, Jalen from Duke," and I was sitting there, I was like, "Jalen from Duke?" I was like, "Does he mean about Jalen Johnson?"
So
Like,
that's just putting the wrong people in the wrong roles, right? Like Mike Schmitz is really good. They lost him to an NBA gig. Like, but you need that person. Like Jay Billis, he's good. Jay Billis knows
college guy, like can dip into both. Yeah.
Yes. Like he is talented. He can do it. Malika is fine. Like she is capable of doing that job. They need somebody else there that's like an NBA. Like why Bobby Marks is not the most, like outgoing guy, but you need to find somebody who can be that kind of draft authority and explain like, why does this fit for this NBA team? How does he translate? Like Perkins is not doing that. And then the Woj thing, Woj is unbelievable at his job. And I know what happened yesterday with the reporting. Didn't end up too well for him at the beginning, but he's really obviously great at what he does, is so tied in. But like ruining the picks why are you ruining your product? Like do it online, do it on Twitter. But like the whole thing is just supposed to be a show and you're tipping the picks on air. It doesn't make sense to me. I know you want to lift him up as the guy. He doesn't need that. Like people can go find him somewhere else rather than on the live show.
It felt like he tweeted it out earlier that it was Jabari. And it was like almost like he told production, you have to let me break this, because if you don't, then I look wrong. So I need to break this on live television. Because I tweeted about it last night. And however I came off in my tweets, I was even more animated just sitting there. So the funniest thing was Woj breaks the pick. Hey, they're going with Paolo Banchero. And you're like, and then before they cut over to Adam Silver, they go, and let's find out who the Orlando Magic are drafting. Let's send it over to the commissioner. And I'm like, we just heard. You just told us. And then they did it again. I forget who they did it with Keegan Murray with the 4th pick. And to me, that pick is the biggest intrigue. And I think Woj knows that. That to me, like draft starts after the 3rd pick. That was the pick that had the biggest intrigue. And he took it upon himself to do that too.
That's a bad TV show. Like that's bad production. Yeah. Like I get it. Like I struggle with, do I want to learn the picks online as they're happening? Or do I want to watch the TV show and be entertained? Right. Like I'm still gonna be entertained, but there's something about going.
Give me a choice.
Yes. Let me decide which of those I want to do. And it feels like ESPN doesn't know which way they want to go with that, on top of maybe not putting the best people in the best place to succeed, to give us the best. And I'm a basketball guy. I want analysis. I want an option for that. And I feel like I should be able to get that from the worldwide leader, the person who has the rights to the NBA draft. So I searched out other options. I looked at Stadium. They're fine. But I went to, I hate to be a company guy, I went to CBS Sports HQ because they were just talking basketball. They had three analysts. Avery Johnson, who's an NBA guy, was a college coach as well. He was fine. Then they had like Adam Finkelstein and Gary Parrish, who I think are really good at the evaluation. Parrish knows the college game. You can agree or not with some of his opinions, but it was just good basketball talk. And I was like, all right, I'll watch ESPN, turn it on when they're going up with a pick, and then I'll go turn to these guys. Like, I wish if CBS was able to show the actual draftees getting drafted, I would have been on that the entire time.
Honestly, I would have been okay with Richard Jefferson. I would have been okay. JJ Redick for sure. I was hoping that they asked JJ, and JJ was like, I'm good. I got other stuff going on, because he's a no-brainer. I'm fine. I understand kind of the value of Kendrick Perkins on First Take. These, I get it.
Great personality.
That's what those shows are. And he's going to stir the pot. He's going to have scorching hot takes that make that get aggregated on Twitter. And I get that. But when we're here for the NBA draft, give me some analysis. Give me some analysis instead of like, he's going to be a guy. And it's like, okay, like why? Right. Like, how does he fit into this team? It's just.
I didn't see the ABC too much. Like
I flip back and forth, and it was
was Jalen Rose better? Like I figured
Jalen Rose was better. Jalen Rose was better, and but it also turned into like this Stephen A. Smith sideshow, which to a point was kind of entertaining because he was but it was also funny because he didn't understand anything that was going on.
Right.
It was like Jalen Duren got picked, and Wendell Moore got picked. The Knicks weren't involved at all in the pick whatsoever. And he's like, I like him. It's a good pickup for the Knicks. And they're like, hey, like, we hate to break this to you, but he's not going to the Knicks.
Listen, a couple of years ago, they had Bill Simmons on there, and everyone was like, this is a joke. This is a joke. At least I knew what he was. He was a fan reacting as a fan there. And then
you remember when Anthony Bennett got drafted? They drafted Anthony Bennett, and you just hear Bill Simmons in the back go, whoa. Like, it's just, and it's funny.
It was almost like he was us up there.
And Bill Simmons was putting out the podcast last night, almost in real time as the picks were going. And I was like, God, I'm just tempted to just go listen to those because, look, I understand. And I also I always feel weird. And I get that if you're ESPN, part of it's like pulling on the heartstrings, and we want like anything we can do to show emotion or get emotion on camera. I almost tweeted last night, this Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey's mom backcourt is going to be unbelievable because she's the one that got drafted, right? It was crazy. It was like Jaden gets drafted and everything else after is about his mom and Ja Morant. Yeah. And I get it's like a fun story. She coached him, but if you're tuning in, you probably know that. But they beat that down. I mean, it was crazy.
I just don't understand how you could do such a great job with the NFL. The NFL draft, they kill it. And I like NFL Network does a great job. I'm watching both of them, but they have Mel Kiper. And whether you agree with all Mel, like he is the NFL, this is what he does all year. Why don't they have an NBA guy? Like Gavoni, I know is not great on air, but like they need to have that next year, whether it's Gavoni or some former front. Yeah. Zach Lowe. Why not have Zach Lowe up there? And it could be with a perk, right? Just give me somebody.
Yeah.
Give me somebody who is doing this year round. And I think they need to find that person next year.
Agreed.
Anyway, that was my rant to start this off. Do you want to start us with a positive?
When we were doing winners and losers, I'm like, if he brings up the broadcast, I'm about to go on a rant.
I hate to start negative there, but I had to address it up front because the rest of it was fun. This was a fun night. So give me a winner, Mike. Who you got as a winner?
I mean, I have 3 winners, but I'll give you my first one. My first winner, and this kind of feels like a cop-out because they had so many picks, but it's the Thunder. Like, look, they've built such a solid crop of young talent. You add Chet, you surround him with playmakers like SGA and Josh Giddey, and then going and getting a couple other pieces that I personally was really high on in Ousmane Dieng, and then Jalen Williams, and then Jalen Williams. They get both Jalen Williams, and look, the importance of fit. These guys are going to get a chance to develop early in this league. And that team is going from like farm system to, oh, you know what? This is a team that's, maybe hovering around that 8 to 11 spot next year, fighting for maybe a play-in game. And if we watch the Minnesota Timberwolves this year, the play-in means a lot to people. Like being able to punch your ticket to the playoffs. So look, they have 16 picks over the next 5 years in the first round. A lot that they can do in terms of moving assets around, but building through the draft. I go back to the Warriors and Celtics. If you look at basically the top, take out Andrew Wiggins, but really the top 6 guys on the floor were homegrown, right? It's Steph Curry, it's Draymond Green, it's Klay Thompson, it's Jason Tatum, it's Jaylen Brown, it's Robert Williams, who I thought was showing to be like a top 5 or 6 guy in that series. It's guys that are homegrown and guys that you've drafted and you've developed. And I think Sam Presti's just done such a good job accumulating those assets and using them to build that team. It's the right way to do it.
And I don't want to really litigate number one, but I think you and I were team Chet just because he's so different and he's so good defensively. And to go to a team that's already got like a lead scorer and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, somebody's kind of an alpha. I think that's great. Josh Giddey is such a good creator. I just think all these pieces fit, and then they're going to have more chances to get another star, right? Like I just think Chet could end up being the 3rd guy on that team, and that would be so good. Like that would be so great of a role for him just to be potentially the defensive player of the year in the NBA, right? Like I think he can do that on that team, and then just to be playing like an Al Horford like role, but doing it better. Like I think he could do those kind of things. So yeah, I'm with you. My first winner, the Big Ten, 9 draft picks, Mike, tied for the most since 1990 for the league. I know there's more teams now than there has been, but 3 in the top 10 is the most since 2013, and like the worst draft ever outside of Giannis. And then 4 in the first round, tied for the most since 2018. So I think it was a great year for the league until the NCAA tournament happened. But, Keegan goes 4, Jaden goes 5. I love the fit for Jaden Ivey. I think we'll bring up the Pistons here at some point, but I love that fit. Johnny Davis, the Wizards, I think it's a high floor guy. I don't know if he's going to be a star, but kudos to him for taking off like he did. And Malachi, surprise guy, goes 20. I mean, if you would have said before the year, he definitely would have been a surprise first round pick. And then the Big Ten owned the second round, at least the start of it, getting 5 guys in the first 43 picks. And I think it was really, showed that Max Christie, Moussa Diabate, and Caleb Houston made the right decision. Like I thought they probably could have came back and been top 20 picks, but they're going to be guaranteed contract guys in the NBA. So I thought those guys were, kind of showed that they made the right decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a great night for the league. And look, Malachi Branham's one of those guys that I do my own mock every year. I'm so high on Malachi Branham. I had him over Johnny Davis. I just
ceiling's higher, maybe.
Ceiling's higher. I think he's better in ball screens. I think he's a better shooter. I think some of what made Johnny a good player in college is going to get a little bit neutralized because he bullied some guys last year. And I'm just not sure that that's going to happen. But is his ceiling,
Mike? I was thinking about this the other day because he's such a good mid-range guy, good defender. Is his ceiling like Rip Hamilton? Like, is that what he could aspire to be?
Yeah, it just remains to be seen. I think that the problem for Johnny right now is, his ball handling isn't great. And the fact that it's not great leads to him taking some difficult shots. And that's part of what happened with Wisconsin last year. So, that's why he gets to that mid-range so often. But, it's going to be an interesting pairing with Bradley Beal. We'll see if Bradley Beal just says, hey, give me my $250 million and trade me. But look, that team, I know they have, Kyle Kuzma. They have a couple other guys on that team, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. It'll be just interesting to see how he meshes in with that. But I think the Big Ten overall, just such a weird year last year because it's just never the conference that you say, oh, wow, look at this star power. Look at 3 out of these 5 first-team All-Americans. It's just we don't see that often with this conference. It's maybe 1 guy, maybe 2 guys that are first and second team. But for it not only to play out that way in college, but to also have it play out in the draft and have 2 top 5 picks, that's a feather in the cap for the league because you just want the Big Ten to just become a little bit more trendy, right? You start getting draft picks, guys start going there and going to those schools. And, it starts to become how people view the ACC and view the Big 12 in terms of pro prospects.
Yeah. So I know some of the guys might've gone lower. Kofi doesn't go, but I think it's a great time for the league. It's just, that's why it's so disappointing. The last 2 years, they haven't gone as far in the NCAA tournament because they've had really good talent. All right, Mike, got another winner, or we want to go a loser?
I'll go another winner. You mentioned the Pistons. Troy Weaver should be put in jail for what he did to the Knicks. I understand that the Knicks accumulated some assets, but look, Ivy falling to you was best case scenario. And then being able to deal for Jalen Duren too. You get 2 impact guys. You have the most cap space in the NBA to go and make a move. I know they've targeted DeAndre Ayton. They've targeted Miles Bridges as 2 guys that they maybe want to bring in. The Duren pick makes me question whether they're going after Ayton. They still might because I think you still need depth. But look, you flip 3 conditional firsts to the Knicks. And this is why I say with the Knicks, if you're trying to get returns immediately, I'm not sure you're going to get that. This pick is a top 18 protected next year. And the reality of it is if the Pistons are a 7 seed, they still get that pick next year because it's still top 18 protected. the next year it goes to a top 13 protected, there's a good chance that the Knicks don't see that pick for another 3 drafts because it's going to convey to the Pistons for 2 years. But there's a great chance that they definitely won't see it next year. We'll see what the Pistons do, but like, I don't know. I don't know if you're helping yourself really in the short term, but we'll get into the Knicks in a second. But I really like what the Pistons have done, and I love Sadiq Bey. I think he's a guy that doesn't really get talked about enough in NBA circles, and what he can add to that team with Ivy and Cunningham, and if you add an Aiden, add a Miles Bridges, that team's going to be fun, just like the Thunder. Like, I think that team's going to be young and fun, kind of like the Grizzlies in a sense, where you look at those teams. But they were certainly one of my winners and should be in playoff contention this year.
Yeah, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Duren. And I think, Miles Bridges makes a lot of sense there. Yeah, Ayton, do they go now that they got Duren? Like, Duren's really young, so you can still get Ayton and have Duren behind him as well. But man, Bridges makes a lot of sense there. So yeah, as a Bulls fan, don't love it. Divisions shouldn't matter all that much, but it's a team that's probably not nipping on your heels. All right, another winner, wings. If you are a wing, it is a good time. If you are long and versatile and somewhat skilled, it is a good time to go in the NBA. If you are below 6'4", not so much. The NBA wants wings because there's one true point guard, and I think that's Ty, that was drafted in the first round this year. Maybe Blake Wesley. Can Branham be like, you know what I mean?
If we're talking Ty Washington as a one true point guard, that's where you're
right.
Yeah, that's telltale sign there.
3 centers, but none in the top 12, right? So these are all 2 through 4s. Like that's what the NBA is going to. You saw it, obviously with the Boston Celtics and their run, but even the Warriors, right? I mean, Steph is different, but I mean, they were full of wings, barely played bigs, and Steph was basically the point guard. Jordan Poole was basically the point guard. So yeah, it's a good time to be wing. So and you're seeing it with Illinois basketball, right? Like, got to have a couple of point guards, but just loading up on wings.
Yeah, you just give yourself more flexibility with what you can do and the lineups you can put in. And look, you mentioned the Warriors too. The guys that they cycled in. Otto Porter's not he's a 2 through 4. Even Nemanja Bjelica isn't a true 5, and he's more of a wing as well. And Gary Payton II was, I guess you could call him a wing. He didn't play point guard for them, but he's a good defender. He's versatile. He switches. There's a lot of value in that. I think you've seen that play out in these playoffs over the past years. And I think that's what these teams look at, is who can we bring in? Because it makes you think less about fit, right? Oh, okay, well, this guy is the 3 and this guy is the 2. It's like, well, we can play 4 of these guys at the same time if we have someone that we can depend on to handle the ball. So yeah, you're right. I'm glad that we're doing this, right? I'm going teams, you're going kind of trends, and I don't know. I appreciate totally buying into the winners losers. I just went straight teams, but I think
it's good.
I think it's a good balance here.
Yeah, no, the other one I want to get out really quick. I think Jabari Smith. I think he's a winner because he doesn't have the pressure of being the number 1 pick, or really the number 1 option in Houston. I think that's Jalen Green, right? So I think those 2 match together. So I know he's disappointed, but he's making still good money. He's in a good situation with a rebuilding team. So I get it's disappointing, but I think ultimately he's going to be a winner in Houston.
Yeah, and honestly, you could make an argument that if Houston wanted Paolo Banchero badly, if you're Orlando and you were okay with all 3 picks, then why not get some assets out of flipping 1 to 3? But I think Paolo Banchero was the best player in the draft. Projecting out, maybe it's Chet, maybe it's Jabari, but in terms of NBA ready, it's Paolo. And you mentioned Jabari. I think he's going to be a guy. Also, Kendrick Perkins, Kevin Durant was the comp there.
Jabari's already got like 30 pounds on him.
Yeah. So look, it's going to be interesting because I think with Kevin Porter Jr., with Jalen Green, they're going to handle a lot of the ball handling. It was the same type of thing with what I mentioned with Jabari potentially going to Orlando, is you got Fultz, Suggs, and Cole Anthony. So a guy that in Jabari Smith who's not as potent handling the ball, you don't want to thrust him into that in his rookie season. You shield him a little bit. You let him develop and start doing what he does to start, which is catch and shoot. It's working in the mid range. He was 61% around the rim this year, or high 50s around the rim this year. So getting him easy looks. He's got guys that can, facilitate. But it's going to be interesting because I don't know, if Kevin Porter or Jalen Green, if one of the two goes down, I think you're talking about ball handling duty for Jabari Smith. I'm not sure I love that. No. But I do think that those guards are going to command enough attention for him to just kind of play in space and be able to do what he does.
All right, Mike, give me another winner.
All right, my last winner is the Spurs. We're not used to the Spurs having a ton of draft capital or just having a ton of draft picks in general, but it's a competent front office. It's a front office that you sit there and say, okay, well, R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich and everyone that has a hand in it, they know what they're doing, right? And I had in my personal mock, I had Malachi Branham going 9 to the Spurs. I couldn't believe he fell as far as he fell, and no surprise they scoop him up. But you get Blake Wesley, you get Malachi Branham, and you get Jeremy Sohan, and I think those three pieces, you can look at the Spurs and maybe you're like, oh, we need a big. You need a lot. DeJounte Murray just carried that team last year. Almost averaged a triple-double, and their guards and wings, they're light. Devin Vassell was, didn't have a bad year last year. He was 12 a game, but it starts getting lighter and lighter the more you go into that rotation. But Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham and Jeremy Sohan, like those are feasibly guys you could have on the court at the same time, depending on what your other two look like. So I really like what they did. And I think they're a team that they're doing it the right way. They have the second most cap space out of every team, so they can make a move too. And they got a lot of really good young talent. So I like what the Spurs did.
And they've been really good drafting guards in the 20s. Like I know maybe Murray's the only star there, but Keldon Johnson's a really good player. Derek White, obviously you just saw what he did with Boston. So they've done a really good job of drafting guards in the 20s. I got two more for winners, Mike. Canada. 2 of the top 7 picks with Benedict Mathurin and Shaedon Sharpe. And then Drew Nembhard and Caleb Houston atop the second round. So we know Canada, Wiggins, you just saw in the NBA Finals. Canada continues to produce more and more talent. And just internationally, France had 4 picks. Australia had 2 picks. Italy. So we know the MVP candidates are top 3 were all right international guys this past year. So it just continues, and Canada has definitely been one of them. The last one was Jalen Brunson, man. Get paid. Illinois runner up for him. I didn't know, I thought he was going to be an NBA player. I thought he'd play the role, but he had such a huge NBA playoffs in a big season, and seems like it's all set up to join Dad Rick with the New York Knicks and be the number 1 guy in New York with Julius Randle. I don't know about that, but hey, take advantage of Jalen Brunson. I always liked it whenever I covered him in his recruitment.
No, he's I know Jalen since since I was in high school. He ended my high school career when he was a freshman at Stevenson.
He's different, man.
Yeah, that was one to forget. That was a game to forget for me for sure. But look, he's a guy that I think you can fit in a lot of places. I think him showing that he can play alongside a guy like Luka and still be efficient, still do what he does, and then in Luka's absence, showing that he could, put up 22 and 5 in the playoffs is big. And I think that's part of what, maybe added a couple million to the, to his contract that he's about to sign. Now, as much as I love Jalen, can he be a number 1 guy for you? Probably not. I think you probably use that cap space that you have and you sign him for $25 million, but I still think you go after one of these other guys, and you're going to have to probably flip the Fournier contract. You probably don't want to part ways with RJ Barrett, but look, Kyrie Irving's floating around. Donovan Mitchell's going to be floating around. So I think
a lot of mediocrity on that Knicks roster, man.
Do I think the Knicks are done? I don't know. If you want to get into losers, I'll get into the Knicks.
Let's go. I had 2 familiar teams.
One of my losers.
I had 2 familiar teams.
I think they've done such a. Here's the thing with the Knicks. You know, when you're a front office, being self-aware matters, right? The Knicks haven't won anything. I mean, they've won one playoff series in the last 22 years, Jeremy. And yet still think every offseason they're like, we're the destination, right? Like KD's coming here. Yeah, KD's coming here. Kyrie's coming here. We may get Zion. You know, like it's just every year they tend to do this. And I spent about a half hour figuring out what the hell was going on with their trades last night, and they got rid of Ousmane Dieng. And
I just thought of this, Mike. Like they have not been to the Eastern Conference Finals in most of these NBA players' lifetimes.
I mean, what, 2000? Was it 1999? I mean, 1999
they
were in
made the finals in that year. I guess the lifetimes, but in their like basketball NBA conscious, most of them
no way. Like the Knicks in their mind, just the Knicks. That's not what the Knicks are. And if anything,
that year, right?
if anything, they in their mind the Knicks are dysfunction because they have been for the last however many years. Look, I think the crazy thing to me last night was you want to make a push for Ivy. The Pistons don't want to give you Ivy. So you turn around and become the third team to facilitate a trade for Jalen Duren to go to the Pistons. Like, it's just, I get you.
For a salary dump to take Kemba so we can try
to take Kemba, but, you know, and it's $9 million that's going to be off the books. I know that you're just kind of chewing into it. Could you have extended that? Maybe spread that out over the next 5 years? Maybe. But look, I just think they're in a position where, like I said, it's a top 8 team protected. It's a top 13 protected in 24. I'm not sure those picks are going to convey in the next 2 years. So, you know, I don't want to say they're in win now mode, but they kind of need to do something. You had a little bit of momentum last year in the playoffs. Last year, I guess 2020, 2021, and you get bounced in 5 games to the Hawks. And it's just, I don't know. You need to figure out something because however they view themselves, it's just not what it is. And they keep punting in certain areas of the draft every single year. And I just think you need to try to find a balance. We talked about this on the last podcast, right? Who can find the balance between building through the draft, picking up some free agents? You have to figure out a way to do that. And the Knicks, I think in their mind, just think, well, you know, we're going to have the guys are going to want to come here.
Yeah, they got to set this up. They got to land somebody big, right? And like when you compare them to like the Bulls, who have less assets now, like when it comes to first rounders, like the Knicks got first rounders now when they convey is in how valuable they're going to be, but they did get some assets. I'll give them that. But
right.
Are you going to be competitive enough to draw if Kevin Durant wants to leave, right? If Zion Williamson wants to leave? Like, that's what I like about what the Bulls are trying to do is they're showing, hey, we're competent, we're competitive, we just need you, right? And we have enough interesting assets that we can trade that we can stay good, but also be interesting to another team. So and at least like that the Bulls have that plan. Like, I know they're not good enough to win a championship, but they're in position to pounce if one of these guys comes available. I'm not sure the Knicks are still.
No, and you got to have enough confidence as a front office, especially if you're, you know, think about AK, right? And think about that front office with the Bulls. You got to be willing to make a signing that in your heart you believe is good for the team, that the general public is going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Mm-hmm. DeMar DeRozan, right? 3 years, $85 million. It's like, really? 3 years, $85 million for DeMar DeRozan? And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. So like I maybe these
Caruso was kind of that way.
yeah, and I think like too many teams may get caught up in the perception of like we can't sign this guy for this much because like what's the public perception going to be? Well, if you think the guy can help you, and you know the guy can help you, then just like do it because it would be funny, and it would be par for the course if they somehow get Kyrie Irving.
It'd be great. They're perfect for each other.
Like it would just be so perfect. Kyrie plays 48 games next year. The Knicks are maybe in the play-in, or
that's probably higher than I would put for him. That's my problem with Kyrie's unbelievable. I would rather have Kyrie than James Harden, right? Like I would. It's just at least James Harden plays some games. Now he doesn't try hard in all of them and play well in all of them, but at least I know he's probably going to play. Like Kyrie Irving, I don't know. Like, you got to be available. All right, one of my losers, the G League Ignite and Overtime Elite. Dyson Daniels and Marshawn Beaucamp both go first round. But Jaden Hardy was the number 4 recruit in the last recruiting class, went 37th overall. So he'll still get paid, but not obviously where he wanted to go. Michael Foster, Illinois fans might remember that name because he visited Illinois. Didn't work out for him. Deshaun Nix, Isaiah Todd, Josh Hall, all those guys didn't go last year. That said, I know they're going to probably take off next year. Scoot Henderson's projected top 5 pick. Oster Thompson and Eamon Thompson are all getting lottery buzz. So maybe it's a bounce back year, but you see these guys that are going into college. I don't know if it's just because they're playing against good competition. They're in our mind a little bit more. These G League and Overtime Elite guys still can do well, but I feel like it's a little dicier to go with one of those right now, especially with NIL, Mike. I think it makes more sense to go to college right now.
Yeah, and the G League Ignite is just such an interesting dynamic. You got guys that were all these highly touted guys for the most part that all come in and, on this one team, and they're all kind of vying for that next year's draft. It's like an extended summer league. Summer league basketball can get kind of clunky sometimes. You're talking about a whole season with that. I mean, Jaden Hardy, you're talking about a guy that led the team in scoring at 19 a game and shot 35% from the field and 27 from 3. That's bad. That's bad. It's part of the reason why he dropped, and he was getting so much buzz, lottery buzz, about a year ago, and that's changed. So I think there's still something to be said about, and I understand there's money involved playing for the G League Ignite, but I also think there's a much better brand opportunity in going the college route. One, just now the NIL is a thing, it for sure is. But 2, I just think there's, Marshawn Beauchamp, unless you watched like the G League showcase this year, you're just like, who? Yeah. And I think there's just a better opportunity for these guys to go the college route and say, hey,
I do want to mention Jalen Green worked out well for him.
It did work out for Jalen Green, yes.
Yeah.
And you'll have those, Scoot Henderson's going to be another guy. You're going to have those where they do work out. But for the most part, some of these guys, it's whatever you have in your mind or what you think is going to happen, it may not turn out like that. And then now you're really working uphill to try to gain some steam to get back to where you thought you were going to be in the draft and where you thought your NBA career was going to be.
All right, you got a loser, Mike?
Yeah, I got the Kings. It's
and I like Keegan. I like Keegan
a lot. And I said on the last podcast, you can't mess this up. You take Jaden Ivey. And look, I don't buy, and I'm not in the Kings front office, but if you're the Kings and you tell me, well, we wanted Keegan because Keegan wanted to be here, or we wanted, because Jaden Ivey didn't want to be here and he made that known. It's like, well, Tyrese Halliburton wanted to be there and you've traded him. And that was a big deal in the NBA because I think Tyrese voiced his frustrations. He's like, hey, not many people want to be in Sacramento. I wanted to be there. I'm a good player. I could help try to turn this thing around, and you trade him. And I think there's just a certain perception with the Kings where they're just kind of floating in purgatory a little bit, where it's like, no, just wait. This is the year. And then they're going to be a 10 seed or 11 seed. And it's just like, you're right back into the middle of the lottery and what can you get? And I still think that it's best player available. Yeah. I don't care. Like if we got to deal with Jaden Ivey and once he gets there, he's going to want to perform well in the NBA either way. But this idea of, we need fit when your team sucks, your team sucks. And you're over here like, well, if we just get players, like just get the best player available and figure out the rest later. Because if you're, and the last point I'll make is you put in your head, okay, well, we have Davion Mitchell and we have De'Aaron Fox. So why would we want to draft Jaden Ivey? Okay, well, when Davion Mitchell gets hurt 6 games into the year next year, now what? Like these things happen during an NBA season. So I'm always on the side of BPA, of best player available, and just kind of stockpiling talent and figuring out the rest later.
or at least get the value of having that pick, right? Draft
Right.
him and make Detroit trade you, right? An asset.
Exactly. They had a chance. They passed up on, from what it sounds like, they passed up on numerous offers. And,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's like a pride thing where it's like we're the Kings, right? And we want to.
And maybe you don't get Murray. Maybe they love Murray. I don't know.
I
But
understand. Like
if
Keegan's
Indiana wanted
great.
to if Indiana wanted to leap you and gave you like Duarte or first rounders, like, man, get the value of having that pick, of lucking out. And I think they really went higher in the lottery, right, to get that pick. Like, man, like, I like Keegan Murray. Is his NBA comp the guy on his team, Harrison Barnes? Like, that's a good player, really good
One.
player.
Yeah.
But man, Jaden Ivey, maybe this looks good for the Kings in a couple of years, but you and I have watched Jaden Ivey. Like, there's just another level, and you're the Kings. You need a star, or at least you need to get the value of having the opportunity to get the star. And I thought they screwed that up. So
And this isn't
love
the first
Keegan
time
Murray.
I've-
Yeah, I love Keegan Murray. I think he'll have a really long career in the
Agreed.
NBA. Great fit for what the NBA wants. I just don't know if he has superstar potential.
Yeah, and I think I do think he's going to be a good piece, right? And but I just think
Pass up Bagley, or you pass up.
I was just going to say that,
right?
You pass up Doncic and Trae Young for
you don't get the benefit of the doubt.
It's hard because this isn't the first time it's happened. So, Kings and Knicks for me, when we're talking teams, those are the two losers of the draft. Look, you got a really good player, but in terms of building for the future, you could have gotten also a good player if you traded back and got some assets with it too. So, was the gap between 4 and 9 crazy? I don't think so. So I had a chance, didn't do it. I told them, don't mess this up. Can't mess this up. They messed it up.
We got to say it, right? EJ Liddell. It's tough night.
Yeah. I had heard that, maybe he didn't have as great of workouts as maybe we envisioned. But at the same time, it's a good spot to land, man.
I do like the spot.
It's a really good fit.
Contract wise, I hate it for him. Man, he's still going to get some guaranteed money most likely, but New Orleans has done this. Like, they're an interesting team if Zion just plays. If he's healthy enough to play. I mean, with McCollum and Herb Jones, what they got, and Brandon Ingram turning into an all-star, like, I think EJ Liddell fits in pretty well there.
Agreed.
Jonas Valanciunas too, really good.
Yeah, no, he's a guy, and I mentioned Xavier Tillman before, but he's a guy that you can just kind of implement. And this is the other thing that I'll mention too. When you're drafting in the second round, even late first round, it's a character. That's the character part of the draft where, hey, you may not play as much as you think. You may spend some time on the Birmingham squadron, right? And so how do you deal with that? And this may be the first time in your life you're the 5th or 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th best player in your team. So we want value in the guys that we pick there. And I think EJ Liddell is the type of guy, he's exemplified over the years that he has great character and he is a good kid. And those are just guys that you bet on because, that no matter what the situation is, whether you say, hey, you're playing 2 minutes tonight, or you're playing 20 minutes tonight, or you're not playing tonight, that you're probably going to get the same EJ Liddell. Now, it's going to be tough. I think for a lot of these, and this is just more of a broader scope here, but for a lot of these players, this is the first time for them that they have it. It's first time for Io. Think about Io, right?
I was going to say, like, Io and EJ remind me so much of each other and how they approach things, their work ethic, character, all of that. So that's why, Illinois fans might not like EJ because he, went to Ohio State instead of Illinois, but I found him so easy to root for. I just think he's exactly what you want in a Big Ten player, a Big Ten star, and now is a representative of your NBA team.
Yeah, and the correlation between Io and EJ to me is they just have a supreme confidence in themselves that rarely ever, treads into arrogant territory.
Yeah,
that's really the best way that I can put it. And those guys that know that they have work to do, that are coachable, despite being All-Americans and being NBA draft picks, those are the guys that go far. So wouldn't be surprised to see EJ Liddell play 10 years in the league just because of the type of kid that he is and the skill set that he has. But look, it's always an uphill battle for these second round draft picks, but I think he's in a good spot.
Yeah. The other losers I had, point guards, we mentioned that. None taken in the top 20. And then the Big East, one draft pick. And it was a second rounder, I believe, Tyrese Martin. That league is a little different than it used to be. So any others that you're thinking of, Mike? Any random draft thoughts? Yeah, I didn't ask you about the Bulls. I wanted to take Liddell, but now it looks like pretty good decision in the long term there. But what'd you think of Dalen Terry out of Arizona?
Yeah, I was actually on radio about 2.5 hours before the draft, and I was like, I had my mock draft, and I actually had EJ there. I was like, I don't know, Dalen Terry may be a good pickup there because it's a guy that you can put in a lot of different spots. He can handle it. He's a great defender. He rebounds really well for his size. That's his size. He's like 6'7", but he has a lot of tools, and you can put him in a lot of different spots. So I like the pick. I like the pick because you're just going with a guy that that's versatile, and I'm excited to see this summer league. I mean, I believe Io going to play summer league? That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, like he's in an interesting spot because I don't think he needs it, but do they want him to work on
the Patrick Williams formula, where it's like, hey man, shoot 25 times.
Yeah, but gaining that confidence as a playmaker at that level. We know he can do it at the Big Ten level, but can he do it at the NBA level? So I think that's his next step as a player and saying, hey, it's your ball, go. Yep. And I doubt Patrick Williams plays summer league this year for the third time, but yeah, that would be interesting.
But I like the pairing of those two, of Io and Dalen Terry, and I actually do think they complement each other very well. We know it's the way Io guarded last year. That's a hell of a defensive backcourt if they end up being on the court at the same time. But look, I still think the Bulls they're definitely not done this offseason. I think you still have some movable pieces. The Zach LaVine stuff still needs to get figured out. We'll see if Vooch sticks around and if they go after Gobert or who they go after to shore up that spot down low. I think for the most part you like their guard talent, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see what moves are made.
I texted Trotter in our text group last night, like right before the pick. I was like, I'd be good with Liddell, it would be my heart, right? But then I said, Tari Eason was picked right before him, so I think it was before that pick. I would have liked Tari Eason, Dalen Terry, or Malachi Branham. Those were the four guys. So when they drafted Dalen Terry, maybe I wasn't as excited as if it was Liddell because I've been watching him for so long.
Sure.
But I was like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a star, but he's in the mold of a Andre Iguodala, a guy that can play two ways for you. He's just long, athletic, versatile, and it makes sense for what they need coming off their bench. So I thought it makes a little sense. I still think there's some shooting upside that maybe isn't tapped into there. So, all right, Mike, that was a fun draft. It was fun to talk about this, and we'll see if our takes are off. But I think we're kind of with the consensus with a lot of these. But it's always an entertaining night for sure, and it's always good to see these dreams come true, especially when, you kind of watch some of these guys as recruits, all the way coming up and then cover them as players, to see their dreams come true.
It's always interesting to, there's how year-round basketball is, especially NBA basketball. The Warriors win the title and it just seems like it's this conclusion and we're heading into the off season, and it's like, oh, we got the draft next week. And then now you head to the draft, you watch the draft, and I always just get excited. I know this doesn't surprise you, but I love summer league. I'll watch every summer league game. I think it's so interesting to see who emerges and what second round pick or undrafted guy carves out a role or a two-way or a training camp invite and parlays that into maybe an opening night roster. Like that's the stuff that I think is really, really cool. And then how they schedule it, they'll match up some of the top picks against each other. I love it, man.
Yeah. And my thing is, like, I know Kendrick's background, right? Like he's got some bad stuff there, but like to see him emerge from that and to have success in the summer league, like after going to Oakland and really focusing and Greg Campy really vouching for him, then to see him earn that spot, or to see Malcolm last year, right? Or Io struggled he had a bad summer league for the most part, but then he learns from it and gets better from it. It's cool. So it'll be interesting to see Kofi go through this and some of the other Big Ten guys that got picked up, whether it's Trevion Williams or some of these other guys. So
and then just seeing the teams together, right? It's Kofi and Johnny Juzang, and Daryl Morcell is going to be a Jazz in the summer league, and it's just fun. It's fun seeing these guys play together that maybe competed against each other, or you kind of would have never thought they'd be on the same team. So that's the other aspect of it too. But I'm excited, man.
Awesome. Mike LaTulip, you're the goods, man. Always love talking hoops with you. We'll catch up with you down the line whenever anything else happens. All right.
Sounds good, man. Take care.